Hey, this is Zacklog the Great. The City of Brass by Rudyard Kipling. Here was a people whom after their works thou shalt see wept over for their lost dominion. And in this palace is the last information respecting lords collected in dust. From the Arabian Nights. In a land that the sand overlays, the ways to her gates are untrod. A multitude ended their days, whose fates were made splendid by God, till they grew drunk and were smitten with madness and went to their fall. And of these is a story written, but Allah alone knoweth all. When the wine stirred in their hearts, their bosoms dilated, they rose to suppose themselves kings over all things created, to decree a new earth at a birth without labor or sorrow, to declare, we prepare it today and inherit tomorrow. They chose themselves prophets and priests of minute understanding, men swift to see done and outrun their extremist commanding, of the tribe which describe with a jibe the perversions of justice. Panders avowed to the crowd whatsoever its lust is. Swiftly these pulled down the walls that their fathers had made them. The impregnable ramparts of old they razed and relaid them as playgrounds of pleasure and leisure with limitless entries and havens of rest for the wastrels, where once walked the sentries. And because there was need of more pay for the shouters and marchers, they disbanded in face of their foemen, their yeomen and archers. They replied to their well-wishers' fears, to their enemies' laughter, saying, Peace, we have fashioned a God which shall save us hereafter. We ascribe all dominion to man in his factions conferring, and have given to numbers the name of the wisdom unerring. They said, Who has hate in his soul? Who has envied his neighbor? Let him arise and control both that man and his labor. They said, Who is eaten by sloth, whose unthrift has destroyed him? He shall levy a tribute from all, because none have employed him. They said, Who hath toiled? Who hath striven? And gathered possession? Let him be spoiled. He hath given full proof of transgression. They said, Who is irked by the law, though we may not remove it? If he lend us his aid in this raid, we will set him above it. So the robber did judgment again upon such as displeased him. The slayer, too, boasted his slain, and the judges released him. As for their kinsmen far off on the skirts of the nation, they harried all earth to make sure none escaped reprobation. They awakened unrest for a jest in their newly won borders, and jeered at the blood of their brethren betrayed by their orders. They ordered the ruled to rebel, their rulers to aid them. And since such as obeyed them not fell, their viceroys obeyed them. When the riotous set them at naught, they said, Praise the upheaval, for the show and the word and the thought of dominion is evil. They unwound and flung from them with rage as a rag that defiled them the imperial gains of the age which their forefathers piled them. They ran panting in haste to lay waste and embitter forever the wellsprings of wisdom and strength which our faith and endeavor. They nosed out and digged up and dragged forth and exposed to derision all doctrine of purpose and worth and restraint and prevision. And it ceased. And God granted them all things for which they had striven. And the heart of a beast in the place of a man's heart was given. When they were fullest of wine and most flagrant in error, out of the sea rose a sign, out of heaven a terror. Then they saw, then they heard, then they knew, for none troubled to hide it. An host had prepared their destruction, but still they denied it. They denied what they dared not abide if it came to the trial. But the sword that was forged while they lied did not heed their denial. It drove home, and no time was allowed for the crowd that was driven. The preposterous-minded were cowed. They thought time would be given. There was no need of a steed, nor a lance to pursue them. It was decreed their own deed, and not chance, should undo them. The tares they had laughingly sown were ripe for the reaping. The trust they had leagued to disown was removed from their keeping. The eaters of other men's bread, the exempted from hardship, the excusers of impotence, fled, abdicating their wardship. For the hate they had taught through the state brought the state no defender. And it passed from the roll of the nations in headlong surrender.